Yo.
How you guys doing?
So, man.
We're doing good.
All's good here. It's another episode of the Banter Buddies. This is our second session, our sit-and-knee, with a bunch of guys just chilling around, talking about the latest, most relevant news applying to all of you around.
Yes, indeed. Most relevant news.
OJ, Allah khalik, can you just hit the AC? Just get it.
It is pretty cold.
Bottom right button right there.
Khalid doesn't provide blankets.
No, of course there are blankets right there. They're hanging right there. They just don't get to have them.
We can cuddle if you want.
We can. Yeah,
by the way, happy May the 4th. We're recording this on May the 5th, but happy May the 4th, guys.
Back in time, May the 4th.
Indeed.
Are you both Star Wars fans?
Huge.
Yes.
Really?
Huge. Man, there's no real representation.
You guys are going to hate me then.
Why?
I think it's the most overrated piece of
I mean, OG, I'll tell you this, okay? Like with Star Wars, the story-wise, yeah, it's so predictable, you know. It's the classic hero, whatever, yada yada. It's been done and it's been done over again. So story wise, I agree with you. But in terms of like introducing, changing gears on sci-fi, it was revolutionary in that sense.
That's the thing. But
I wouldn't disagree with that. Yeah.
OJ comes from the same as you. You come from this this background of being movie buffs and film buffs, and you're a filmmaker. For you, judge it by that criteria. Is it? For us, it's more like if you look at the older Batman movies, if they're cheesy today, it doesn't matter what the geek movie was. It's more like every time there's a movie, it's like yes,
exactly.
But Star Wars was one of the earliest real successes. If you look at all the sci-fi, well, it's more of a fantasy movie, really. But if you look at the sci-fi / fantasy genre and Flash Gordon and all this other stuff, there hasn't been really a lot yet. So it's more like
Flash Gordon is more of a cult movie, you know. I mean,
it is, but it was successful. At the time,
it was. Yeah.
I mean, if you lose on that, if you think about that, you're like, okay, يعني في ذيك الأيام تخيل شيء تخيل أنت شيء تموت فيه ما حد يعطي وجه, like something nobody's ever thought twice about,
right?
And then suddenly somebody comes out and they give you this budget and huge special effects and everything else, and you're.
And you know something, when it came to Star Wars Episode 7, I remember when it got released, everyone on Facebook was like, "Oh my god! Oh wow! Oh, Star Wars!" And I'm like, "Dude, you're not a Star Wars fan, man. You're just jumping on the train here." So I wrote on Facebook like, "Oh, suddenly everyone's a Star Wars fan."
Yeah. Well, they've made it more accessible now.
Yeah, they have. They have.
Well, they have to.
Yeah.
Yeah, before it used to be ridiculed for being a Star. Well, not ridiculed, but people would look at you funny for saying, "Oh, I like watching Yoda train Luke and whatever," and now it's like, oh yeah, Star Wars, Disney. Well, funny enough, Episode 6 is my favorite.
Return of the Jedi.
From all, Return of the Jedi,
because it's the first real space battle.
I mean,
what's your favorite part of it?
It's more sentimental value more than anything. Because how I got introduced to Star Wars was...
you related to the Ewoks.
I kind of related to the Ewoks and the fact that I was short and hairy back then. But it's more like... my friend introduced me to them. Shout out to Abdul in Amsterdam. I promised him I'd do this.
Did you?
All right, yeah.
You told him I'm going to be talking about Return of the Jedi on the podcast.
Well, I told him I was going to be talking about...
Saturday in Bahrain.
I was going to be talking about the suicide machine that we discussed last week. But sorry, Adil, it didn't play out that way.
No, it didn't.
But yeah, he introduced me to Star Wars and I thought he was weird as f***. Like that, we're talking 4th grade here.
Yeah.
Right? But I really got into it, and Return of the Jedi was really the movie that sort of completed it for me.
Yeah. So
I was like, damn, I really like this movie.
You need to get on it. You felt it was relatable. And to me, there was the Emperor I liked a lot. The space, from a special effects point of view, it is my favorite. And then you get to see the bigger ships and what they kind of went out all the way to do. Because that was the time when they'd actually make models.
Yeah. See, that's probably the one thing that I really appreciate about it at the time.
That commitment to special effects.
I like the physicality of special effects. Yeah. You don't get that a lot nowadays. Especially with the recent Jurassic Park, it really pissed me off.
Because it was very CGI.
How much CGI there was, even though they were like, oh no, we actually used a lot of prosthetics. Nah, you can tell that most of it was CGI.
I think OJ, the point special effects and whatever is that when you see them nowadays, you get bored of them because they all look the same. Yeah. But even back then, even if the movie didn't do so well in terms of special effects, you appreciate the effort that's put into it.
Yeah, it's weird though. Even there's some movies with special effects that you kind of look at and you're like, oh my god, this aged really badly. And then there's others.
Some of it does not age, man.
The first Jurassic Park, man.
So I still watch that, and I'm amazed.
It's still I'm like, yep, I believe him.
That's so.
I'll go back even further, man.
Give me something.
Metropolis.
Come on,
Metropolis, man.
Look, look. At the time,
it still looks like Metropolis, but I didn't believe it then. Do you know what I mean?
Have you seen The Fly?
Yes,
That aged so well.
Aged well, very well.
The Fly.
It's still creepy. It still gives you shivers when you see that
That's
transformation.
That's my favorite Cronenberg movie.
Yeah.
You gotta see The Fly, man.
You remember last time we talked about why there's no real Arabic horror, man. It's the genre that people the most impact about to kind of be like, this is an Arabic horror movie. And there are other good movies, but why is there no sci-fi?
Honestly, I think the answer is simple. I think it's probably the lack of equipment that we have here. Although a lot of people do have the money to do that, but we just don't have the facilities to make that happen.
But is it really? Like we said last time, we don't have to. Sci-fi doesn't have to be about special effects.
Yes, but you need a background in, well, at least on how to make an actual sci-fi.
I think here
you can't make a proper horror movie. Like, how can you make a sci-fi?
Are you saying it's because of like the?
I think it's just a lack of knowledge. I don't know. I don't think it's only sci-fi. I think just the film industry in general in the Gulf is not pretty much. They don't invest in it that much.
So what is it about horror that makes it more accessible? Is it the fact that it's something primal, easy to understand?
Probably.
Well, because a lot of people here grow up with qasas, which is ghost stories and whatever. So I think they relate to that more. So there's a bigger audience for that.
Right.
But with sci-fi, it's a really narrow community. I'm talking like real sci-fi fans.
Is it because it can cause bad issues? Like it's always challenging and people don't like to be challenged?
Maybe. But I think the main difference between sci-fi and horror is that horror can be made cheap, and even if it was laughable, at least you'll enjoy it. Right. Sci-fi, if it was cheap, you're like.
I can give you a concept for a very cheap sci-fi movie. It will be like controversial as but it'll be very cheap and immediately it'll grab your attention. Okay, let's say time travel, and then a rift in time, somebody's sucked back from the golden age of like the Islam or Sahaba or something. Like, without getting into the topics of what we're going to be discussing. But you immediately, the second I tell you, okay, not even a major figure, not even a historical leader or anything else, just the average person from that time period. Being brought into our world and talked to.
But see, that's the thing. I mean, you sort of you said very controversial. We're not really welcoming of controversial topics if you think about it.
We're not, but does it have to be? Like that's my issue. Is like we immediately assume the first thing you're going to do is ask them about that time period. You're not going to ask them
because that's the whole point of sci-fi is that it's like you're commenting. Like you use sci-fi to comment on common issues right now.
Sorry.
And I think that's the whole point of sci-fi is that you can use something so supernatural and just say, it's like you're using it as space to kind of move around the actual issue. And
we in the Arab world, when we want to comment on an issue, we don't use art or whatever or cinema or we don't use it directly.
We don't use it enough.
Subversive, because you're trying to. It's almost like you're playing a trick, and it's seen as you're trying to maybe manipulate something in your favor instead of actually talking about the issue. Because we're very much about okay, we're going to talk about this thing. It's going to be measured. It's going to be only done by certain people who are qualified.
I'll give you an example. There was a movie released a couple of years back. I think it was a French director of Moroccan origin. He was talking about, he released a movie talking about prostitution in Morocco.
Right.
And the guy received so much backlash for it.
Yeah.
Because he was talking about an issue that's present, that everyone knows about, but no one sort of wants to talk about, like it's taboo.
Right.
And the guy was getting so much backlash from Moroccans, like, oh, you're misrepresenting our country, and how dare you, and whatever.
Yeah.
And I was just like, you know what, man, it's there, it's happening, the guy has balls for doing it.
Yeah.
But we don't respond well to controversial topics.
No, we don't.
We don't.
We don't. Well, have you guys seen the movie The Insult? Have you seen that? I really recommend it.
I think so. What is it?
It's a Lebanese-Canadian movie, and it got tons of laurels.
Lebanese are very controversial, by the way.
Very.
They're very ballsy. Have you heard of Caramel?
I heard, but I've not
I
seen
have,
it.
yeah.
I've heard the name, though, yeah.
You heard of
I've heard of
Nadine
Caramel.
Labaki. It's
Really,
unbelievable.
yeah.
There is a scene. I'm gonna try to describe it as clear as I remember it. There was a scene in there. The whole film is about these girls in a spa. Like, what's it called? Yeah, it's basically a spa.
Okay.
So most of the film just revolves around the girls who work there. It's about mostly about issues of women and sexuality. Anyways, and there's a scene in there where it's implied that there's a homosexual connection between two women.
Right.
And it's just implied, and it's done so well, and I've never seen it done in any film in my entire life.
Okay, no.
It's done so well, it's just a look.
Let me write this down. What is it called?
It's called Caramel.
Caramel.
Yeah.
It already sounds very
That's easy to remember.
Caramel.
And there's nothing, like, it's just, they're just assumptions, and it's like playing tricks with your head, but it's so well done.
That's why I want you to see The Insult. It's one of those movies that it's done in court case style.
Okay. Oh, I like that.
Yeah. So yeah, the movie's about this. He's a Palestinian construction worker, and he's like a contractor, and he's working for this government initiative to basically repair a whole like community, Hara Kamla of Beirut. Mm-hmm. And this other guy, he's a Lebanese Christian. He lives in one apartment complex. Very very aggressive guy, very conservative, and have political views about his own like ethnicity, what his identity is, and the second he sees the guy, there's water, he's cleaning his balcony, and there's a pipe that comes out of the balcony, one of those definitely just pours out into the streets, and it hits the guy, the construction guy, the Palestinian guy on the head. And so he comes up and tries to help the guy, basically saying, "Hi, mamnu," and like, yeah, you need to do something about it. And he is very polite about it, but the guy becomes a complete dick. Like the other guy, the guy in the apartment, he's like, no. And you can tell that there's something there. There's a reason why he's being a complete dick, right?
Right.
So he doesn't let him into the apartment to fix it. So they go from the outside in the balcony and they repair the pipe without doing anything. He puts up a new pipe that kind of leads back into the building. And no cost, Danny. They're doing it for him. Right. And the guy comes out, gets pissed off, and starts breaking the new pipe, and he's not allowed to do that. Poured on his head water, now he's being a dick. He can feel there's something against him, so he goes, "Yeah, ars," really insults him like that. And the other guy gets pissed and starts complaining about him to his contract company and everything else. So he asks for an apology, and the whole situation keeps escalating until there's one insult that's said, and I'm not going to give it away because I want people to watch it. Right. And it's the kind of insult that their conflict becomes the whole country's conflict.
Oh. Shit.
It's one of those,
That's really interesting.
So that explains the title of the movie, The Insult.
The Insult.
Oh, okay, yeah.
The Insult.
I think for us here, it's a pride thing more than anything. And when you get insulted, like we get really butthurt.
Yeah, we do.
Generally,
we do.
But it's a pride thing.
Speaking of that, why don't we get enough swearing in, especially in the GCC, especially TV shows or movies? It's like you're avoiding this kind of reality that you're living in,
See, the thing is, OJ is... Let's talk in the realm of Khaliji dramas, okay? Now, they're catered towards everyone, everyone in the population, from kids to old people. But I don't recommend kids watching Khaliji dramas because they're...
I don't recommend anyone watching it.
Exactly. I mean, it's good for comedy material.
Oh, it's really good.
It's really good for comedy material.
So many bits about that.
But like, I wouldn't advise a kid to watch a Khaliji drama because it'll them up. It'll give them such an unrealistic view of Khaliji families.
Yeah. Exactly. It's unrealistic, and that's the problem. Like, why do they keep on insisting that Khaliji families are like that? Like, I've never met a Khaliji family.
Never.
I have.
Maybe a couple,
but they're like the 1%. They're the 1%. It's kind of like
a minority, exactly.
Yeah. And they should represent it in a more realistic way, in a more sort of like a modern life way. Hatta the shows that try to be historical, fil Farjan, God, I'm just like that shit never happened.
Yeah, because what happened is that it became a parody of itself. So it's almost like they're just copying past TV shows, but they're not addressing any modern issues that we're dealing with.
They're all the same. You're like, from the first episode, you're like, oh, I know what's gonna happen.
This guy's gonna die. This guy's gonna die.
Exactly.
This guy's gonna get slapped.
He's getting into drugs.
Exactly.
This guy's the drug.
Every character's the same.
And there has to be a scene where like some young son or whatever gets into like a whole alcohol phase.
Yeah.
With the يروح الميلس ويشرب I don't know, like a glass filled with whiskey or whatever, apple juice. Sorry,
and there's this intense music as if it was a horror film.
Saudi champagne,
right? And then he walks into his house and his mom sees him and he's drunk and whatever. It's so predictable. It happens every year.
Yeah. It's so bad.
And that's coming up now, actually.
It is. It is in Ramadan.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's a shame how much they spend on that, man.
But that's what sells, man.
That's the thing. Does it really sell?
It does. But it's all across the board. It's not even just us. It's like the Turks do it, the Latinos do it, the Mexican soap operas do it, the Koreans do it. The Koreans are hilarious.
Yeah, but at least the Koreans have interesting ideas. Yes,
they have good cinema as well.
They have good, like they have a
spectrum.
They do.
I think I think our problem here is the fact that we try to include everyone in the mix.
Yeah,
which is kind of a double-edged sword. Yani, okay, fine, you can have series that kids can watch and whatever, but then again, like OJ said, it's become a parody. And kids might enjoy it because, it's a bunch of stupid shit. But adults, they're like, I need something more intellectually appealing. I need something that picks my brain.
Well, it
makes
has
me
to
think.
be. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, but again, that doesn't mean, like, even if you're trying to cater to a wider audience, I mean, just look at Hollywood, for example, Sometimes they would reduce the amount of swearing content in a film just so they can cater to a bigger audience, but they make interesting films. They make entertainment.
See, I'll just put it out there that I'm not a Marvel fan, but I liked Logan because Logan sort of broke all the rules of Marvel norms.
That you can kill Wolverine,
and that's the kind of thing you would never see in the Gulf. You would never see someone going against the current just to make something interesting.
I remember the director for Deadpool. He was saying this, but he was pissed off at Hollywood after the success of Deadpool, and he was like, "Oh, see, you guys you always laud us, and you're like approval. This movie's amazing. This movie's like that." But I can't remember his exact words. I'm paraphrasing here, but the whole article was him writing about how Hollywood is always late to get to the curve. They're always late. They're adapting after somebody took the risk.
Exactly.
It's one guy, and then after that movie formula works, everybody copies it.
because they want to make sure, like they're spending like, I don't know, like 100 million on a movie. They're like, we want to make sure they give it to. I don't know if you guys know this, but they have test audiences for films. If you'd be amazed of how much, like they'd finish a film and they'd get a bunch of people just to see if it pleases them. Like, is that
right?
That's not even the point of cinema.
There's no balls in cinema anymore.
Well, what do you prefer? You prefer that or the Netflix algorithms? What do you? That's a tough one, huh?
Netflix algorithms,
because they kind of hit and miss.
But the thing about Netflix algorithms is that they're accurate in the sense that they would cater to.
There's enough randomness.
They would cater to niche audiences as well. Like you would never have had something like Mutes come out in the cinemas.
Exactly.
And as the amount of problems I have with that film, it's kind of ballsy that a company like Netflix would say, "Here's the money, and just go ahead and do whatever you want."
I agree. That's the thing I would always prefer with the algorithms is that there's always, like, if you look at the Hollywood older formulas, like I forget what they call it in marketing, but that type of group testing or selection testing, you're always there's like, one guy has to work like crazy to get them funding to get everything to do his vector movie that comes out of nowhere and then makes success, and then people follow that formula as the new norm.
Yeah.
But with the algorithms, there's always a high chance of seeing something new and weird stuff.
Because as a human being, you're not restricted to only seeing one thing.
Exactly.
Like you change it. That's human nature.
People want diversity.
So you don't just want a Marvel film every damn second.
I'm actually sick of not Marvel. I'm sick of superhero films in the cinema. You
didn't see the Avengers movie?
No, I have not.
I haven't seen
it. Will you see it?
No, I ruined the story for myself on purpose just so I can't see it.
Okay, this is spoiler free, right?
Yeah, this is spoiler free.
I'm just letting everybody know that the following comments, I'm going to make about a minute's worth of comments about Avengers, And actually, it's going to be less, but just skip forward for a minute. I promise you it's not going to be more than a minute. It's going to be 10 seconds.
All right.
You ready? The good guys win.
You know, the thing is with superhero movie, and I review movies, and when the Avengers came out, the original Avengers came out, the first one, among my group of friends, I was really like, yeah, exactly. I was really like, they gave me shit for like hating the Avengers. And I told them my argument then was it's more like Tony Stark and the Avengers. It wasn't really the Avengers. It was more focused on Iron Man.
Because they paid him more. That's why.
Right, but little did I know. I made a small comment that came to attention now. I said that the movie looks too plastic. It's too sunny. It's too bright.
There's not enough grit in Marvel.
Exactly,
but what are you expecting from a superhero movie?
That's the theme.
No, but he wants the DC real grittiness.
That's
But is DC really gritty? Like when you see a DC?
No. Look, I have not seen any of the DC movies yet.
Have you played the Arkham Asylum video games?
Yes.
That's what you want.
Yes, that is what I want.
I had a feeling that's what he wants.
That or the Nolan Batmans or
Definitely.
But even the Nolan Batmans, I would want them to be that. The Arkham Asylum. That's to me Batman. That is really the atmosphere, the depression.
True.
The all is lost in Gotham. Everybody's messed up. It's one psychopath after another.
And isn't that interesting? Is that they know that there's a huge audience for those kind of video games.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't they just make a film like that?
Because it's too risky.
Maybe.
What I liked about the Avengers movies, there's a part in it where, when you watch a movie and you're like, oh my god, there must have been like 7 producers shouting out that shouldn't happen. Like 7 producers are like, that's too much. Don't do that. No.
Exactly.
That happens in every movie, right?
True. It's one of the scenes that I would remember. I think that's what you mean. Is that when I think it was the last Avengers, the one before it.
Yeah.
Where they're in, I think it was in Tony Stark's place, and they're in the row, and they're just hanging around, and they're playing that game with who can lift.
Yeah, that's Age of Ultron.
And they're like, "Why is that scene even?" It's a huge budget film, and they just gave him like a couple of minutes just to do that.
Just to do that, and to me, that's what I like about modern movies, especially the modern huge blockbuster movies. They're starting to take a little bit of risks, especially this last Avenger movie took a huge risks, and I can subconsciously hear the producers screaming, going, "No!"
Especially after making something like Deadpool and even Logan, as you mentioned, and even that thing with, because at the time I think when Ant-Man was in the making, I think Edgar Wright was supposed to direct that as well.
Yeah,
the guy who did Baby Driver recently, and that was supposed to be something like, I mean, imagine Edgar Wright making a superhero movie. It's like watching Deadpool, basically.
A superhero movie that not a lot of people talk about here is Watchmen.
I was actually going to mention that. I thought you'd be
Watchmen is my favorite superhero movie because it really ticks all the boxes for me. It's kind of film noir mixed with there's a lot of blood, there's a lot of swearing, and the story is just it's unpredictable. A lot of characters that you like, they die.
Yeah.
True. But here's the thing. Here's why I don't like to compare Watchmen that much to especially those Marvel movies. Is that Watchmen was supposed to be this like anti-heroic.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be a dog. It was a graphic novel by, what was his name? The guy who did the serial killer one. But it's almost like the kind of content that Marvel is creating, it's not meant to be that dark and gritty. And I don't think they can do that. As many risks as they can take, they can't pull something like that.
They're getting the balls to go there now. Yeah. Slowly, I can see it, that they're slowly moving towards it. So because TV has led the way, is this an anti-hero? Is he right? Is he wrong? They're doing a lot of these morally vague shows, right? We talked about this last time. And because of that, they feel like the algorithms and the data is now on their side.
True.
So marketers are not as scared to kind of say...
Yeah. And they're willing to give films with lesser budgets more of a chance. Like Deadpool, when it came out, I was like, we'll just give you a bit of, a little bit of money and just do whatever you want, and it turned out really good.
That's the way. I'm sorry, Matrook, I want your opinion on this, okay?
All right, go ahead.
You notice how there's these algorithms and all the data saying, take the risk.
Mm-hmm.
And one side, they're doing that. But on another side, there's this whole aspect of, you don't want to offend anybody.
Right.
Even right now in the podcast, I'm thinking about it because I don't want to offend anybody.
And we want to please everybody. So whatever kind of whatever's mainstream at the moment. Oh, it's Black Lives Matter. Let's put more black people in there.
There's always There's always OJ. There's always that statement in the back of people's minds, in the back of producers, directors, and whatever. And when it came to Black Panther, and everyone was like, applauding it for being an all-black cast and whatever. And I was just like,
did you forget about Boys in the Hood?
Exactly. Right?
Come on.
What was that movie I was watching? Django. Yeah. He's not a superhero per se, but he's a really powerful.
What about Blade?
But Blade,
the difference.
Exactly.
But that's the thing. The difference between those
Black Dynamite.
The difference between those films and Black Panther is that even the director and the producer are black.
Yeah.
And I think that's what stirred up something.
Well,
big.
Yeah, I think somebody kind of gave me a good response about why Blade was, but I just don't like that some people have rightfully said, okay, Blade was not necessarily a black character. It's more of like he has black skin, but he could easily have been a white guy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not ethnically black.
True.
And I understand that. I understand that point of view. But there are people that are pretending like there's never been a huge successful black movie. And it's like, what are you talking about?
And there are things that go, under the radar. Oh, by the way, his name was Alan Moore, the guy.
Alan Moore, yeah.
I'm trying to remember his name.
The guy who wrote Watchmen, right?
Watchmen, and he I gotta find the other one that was really famous. It was about the serial killer. I don't know if you remember it. But yeah, a lot of films do go under the radar, especially the one. I don't. Have you guys seen Dope?
Dope. Yeah.
It's on Netflix.
Yes.
Is it the series?
I like that.
That was an really almost full, black cast, and the director was black. What's his name? Fukuyama or something.
Yeah,
like
I watched that.
It sounded Japanese though.
Yeah, it does sound Japanese.
Is he Blackanese?
He's maybe, or could be just one of those African names that sound Japanese.
I actually started watching Dope with my dad. Like, we had nothing to watch, and I started watching it with him, and I took it off by the first 10 minutes because it's just
it's very strange. I just watched it last night again for the second time, and I was amazed of how much balls it has, man.
Yeah.
That's such a ballsy film too. And it starts off as it's supposed to be this kind of coming of age story, and then there's drugs and people dying around, and I'm
exactly.
right. What is this rated, man?
you know something? I want to bring this up. When it comes to superheroes, there's a movie I'm really looking forward to, and it's been in the process of getting made forever since the 90s when it was released. Spawn.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's not they don't consider that a black superhero.
No. I'm not talking about that right now. I'm just talking about the movie.
But I think they're trying to make it that.
They are.
That's another movie that the special effects still hold up. Recently, and I was like, "Mbala, it does. It kind of does."
Khalid.
Not all of it. Not the scene with hell.
Khalid, the hell scene.
Not the hell scene. Not the hell scene. I'm talking about the transformation.
I've only seen the hell scene. Actually, on YouTube, isn't it? Speaking of hell, the book I'm trying to remember was called From Hell. Thank God.
I heard of that book, actually.
Okay, all right.
You know something about Spawn?
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I was just blown the away, and that delusion of it's like the best superhero movie or whatever still carried on with me to this day until I
haven't seen that.
Oh yeah, exactly. Khalid just put out a Spawn figure.
He didn't see that was there.
You're not going to see that ever again. You know that, right?
No, I know.
We're going to have to split it between me and you.
I will hire Canadian bears.
I always thought that was one of the coolest characters I've ever seen.
He is. He's cool. I mean, look at his cape. Look at his armor.
He was the original, as far as a lot of people's comic book experiences go. He was everybody's first real anti-hero.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? For a lot of time. Some people don't consider Batman an anti-hero, but he is. But Spawn was like really like messed up. Like,
and there's so much room for a really good movie. And from what I read, they're not exactly going big budget on this one. And speaking, in relative,
they did in the day. Do you remember the HBO animated movie?
Oh yeah,
they did. They did an animated series.
It was a couple of.
Was it a mini series?
Yeah, it was
a
mini
series. Yeah, that's right. So it was like played up like 3 or 4, and everybody was like freaking out at the time. Like HBO's making Spawn.
Yeah,
like HBO's never done anything comic book.
HBO, man. HBO was the Netflix of its time.
It was, yeah.
Honestly, like they made some really good stuff. You guys remember Carnival or what was it called?
Man, that was good.
That's such an underrated show,
That was a
man.
really underrated show.
It's Carnival with an E in the end.
Transfers life from anything and then gives it, like, he can suck your life out of your body. Not in this graphic way that some of you are picturing.
But it's such a good... It had all this religious commentary in it.
Yeah, a lot of it.
Is it like a Darth Pelagius kind of thing?
Kind of. Yeah. See, I'm enough of a Star Wars fan to know what you're talking about. But,
I have no idea what you're talking
about. You know something, man. When it and since we're on the topic of Spawn, I said,
move on to Apu.
I was so deluded by the fact that it was the best movie ever, or whatever. Until last week I watched I don't know. Do you know the Nostalgia Critic?
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't really like it.
I watched this video and he pointed out all the mistakes in the special effects, and I'm like, dude, don't do this. You're killing me slowly, man. Don't do this.
No, but the transformation scene for the clown dude. What's his name? Bao. I keep forgetting his name.
The Violator.
The Violator.
Yeah.
That one's still good, man. Like, I mean, it's not bad. It's not bad. I understand what you mean.
But there's some really cheesy dialogue in there as well.
Yeah, there is.
I mean, it was the 90s.
That was my problem, was the cheesy dialogue, definitely. Because they would never they'd never have good writing for comic book movies.
Right.
Like they never had good writers that would just come up with dialogue.
Yeah, but I think it wasn't really taken that seriously at the time.
They saw it the same as action movies. So like
because it started off like that. Like when you watch the early Superman comics, they're very childish.
Yes. Yeah. But comic books moved away from that when people were like, okay, listen, there's nothing here besides the violence and everything else.
Yeah.
And then you know what changed it? It was Star Trek. Star Trek and some of these other movies, the dialogue was serious. The issues they were talking about were serious in the 1960s. So everybody post-1960s started...
Lizard people.
I love how he got close to the mic when he said, "They're listening to us, the lizard people." Yeah, everybody after the 1960s, because of the lizard people, were... He's messing with me because we saw a Donald Rumsfeld thing with Louis C.K. just trying to harass him for like an hour about lizard.
You don't know what you're messing with.
If you guys don't know what we're talking about, just look up Louis C.K., Donald Rumsfeld, Opie and Anthony. And this is one of my favorite moments with Donald Rumsfeld ever. All right. Moving on. What was I going to say? I lost track of that. Apu. Yeah, actually. Yeah, Apu. That's a good example of people getting offended by something that was... What was it they said?
What exactly... Was it something that he said?
No. It's just that the character's always been offensive. The character himself, what he portrays, the fact that he says, "Oh, thank you, come again." That. Years ago, a guy who came up with a movie about Apu and him being an Indian American, but like a son of immigrants.
Yeah.
And then he found that this portrayal of American immigrants was very like racist and very one-dimensional. And a lot of people at the time were like, yeah, but it's a character and it's the Simpsons and does that for everything. A lot of things are one-dimensional. And when they do, Apu's character actually does become rich in a lot of different scenes. Like they talk about some really... Like there's episodes about him and his immigration and his problems in America and everything else.
Yeah.
So the idea was the way the Simpsons responded to it. I think it was Lisa talking to Marge as she's about to put her to sleep, and she looks at the camera and says, something about on the lines of... Actually, let me find the exact lines. I don't want to paraphrase this line at all.
While you're looking that up, I want to address an issue. With people getting offended, is Friends. I'm not a big fan of Friends. Like, Friends is the kind of show you watch when you got nothing else to watch.
Thank you.
You know what I'm saying? But with Friends, when it was uploaded on Netflix, I'd watch all these articles on Lad Bible or on Vice or whatever. Like, millennials are getting offended because of Friends.
Yeah.
I don't know. What are they expecting?
Have they not seen films have you gone back to the 90s and 80s?
Exactly.
You know how offensive it was back then? You know?
Yeah, but they're moving away from that. That's the point. They're trying to like point out like, oh, well, a white guy shouldn't be playing the voice of Apu. Do you know what I mean?
No, I'm talking about if you're critiquing something that was released in the 90s, you can't, like what are you expecting you can't critique something that was already released and, it just
exactly. It's been 20 years.
Yeah.
20 plus
It's not like
years.
they can go back and change it,
Exactly.
That's it.
Next thing you know, they're gonna start bashing HBO for being, for showing tits or whatever.
Yeah.
All right, so this is the actual description of the episode from The Independent. It goes, after being visited by the book's author, this is Marge having written some kind of commentary, something about a book. The author always along with Rudyard Kipling. During a dream sequence, Marge is convinced that she needs to update the book to 2018 standards because the book is just not right for the times they're in. So she works on it tirelessly, and Marge reads the updated book to Lisa, eventually admitting that it takes the spirit and character out of a book. So that by updating this, they've taken out the essence of the character. Mm-hmm. And Marge later asks Lisa, "What am I supposed to do?" To which her daughter responds by looking at the camera and saying, "Something that started decades ago and it was applauded and inoffensive is now politically incorrect. What can you do?" And as she does this, she's looking at a picture of Apu near her bed. I don't know why she has a picture of Apu right near her bed.
Especially near her bed.
They're just like, fuck that shit. We're going to put a picture of Apu.
Yeah, so Lisa has some weird Apu fetishes, maybe.
Good night, Apu.
Yeah. So a photo of Apu featuring the caption, "Don't have a cow," then appears next to Lisa's bed, hammering home the already obvious message. And Marge then says some things will be dealt with at a later date, with Lisa adding, "if at all." So it's almost like the Simpsons writers are trying to say, listen, we understand that this character may be out of date for the times we live in right now, but what can you do when something that was applauded as inoffensive as something is now considered politically correct? It's 30 years.
And Apu is has been cemented into the Simpsons. Like the Simpsons without Apu might as well not be. It won't be the Simpsons without him.
Yeah.
And I think the snowflake generation. They're just.
Hey, this is your generation, man.
I had a part of that, man. I had a part of that.
We're somewhere in the middle. I think it's just gonna end up just like. I mean, I don't want to compare this to Kevin Spacey because it's not really.
Yeah.
But if just see it as the thing about Kevin Spacey came on. They just removed him from House of Cards, and I think that's kind of what could happen to this.
I think they couldn't, because if you remove the character, you're just doing something weird to the storyline. You'd have to kill him off, right,
and it's almost against the whole point of Simpsons. Because I do believe some of it is meant to be offensive. For it's not offensive, but it's meant to be
controversial.
Yeah, it's meant to be a parody.
That's the point of quote unquote adult cartoons.
Yeah,
Yeah, like you don't go to Adult Swim and expect to. Be pampered and all that.
Exactly.
But you expect to be offended.
But that's the thing, that they're selective about what Apu represents. So, for example, yes, he's a caricature of an identity in U.S. Citizenry. So it's one segment of the population that are immigrants. Now, that characterization is very off, but then there's a lot of episodes that are actually defending that perspective, or like they're showing a real, like, the struggle they have to go through, the issues, the differences of how he is as an immigrant compared to how hard he works compared to somebody else that doesn't.
Right.
That's why they applauded the character at the time. And now it's like, well, is that worth the amount of offense that the character can cause? Because from a lot of people's claims, when you're the kid of an immigrant and you're an Indian, a lot of people use Apu to make fun of you. So they say like, "Oh, thank you, come again." Like they make fun of somebody's accent by saying that. That's the case, and it's an argument to be made. But what are you going to do about it?
I mean, I think
change Hank Azaria, put in an Indian guy saying the same things. Does that make it better?
Not, like I think if you do that, then you'd have to start doing this with other shows.
Like when does it stop?
Yeah, like when does it stop? It reminds me of Aziz Ansari, like his what's the name of the show?
Master of None.
none.
Yeah.
Like he's going around and trying to get roles, and he's like, "Why do I have to be always cast as an Indian to be, represent India?"
Yeah, that was a really big nagza. How do you say nagza?
Yeah.
Like a hint. Yeah, a big hint.
Yeah.
But you do have people like him, and they're making shows that are interesting and that kind of push boundaries a little bit in terms of, cultural or in terms of racial issues and all of that.
Yeah.
That's the thing about media. When you start censoring things, it just becomes fascist at some point.
You snowball down things, and then
something. Because this is in the realm of comedy. The Simpsons, Family Guy, yada yada. When you censor comedy, and like Bill Hicks said that comedy is the last bastion of free speech that we have right now. And funny enough, he said that in the 80s. So once you start censoring comedy, I'm sorry, but you're just telling people what to think and what to feel and how to perceive things, and I'm sorry to say it, but that's borderline fascist.
It is. It's at some points it does cross it if you're not allowed to talk about it and not allowed to make the mistake.
The whole point of free speech is that you risk to be offensive at a certain point.
Exactly.
True.
So I was thinking about this the other day about how easily things change if just the context of something changes. So, for example, like we said, how if Apu was being played by an Indian American, none of this would come up.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? And I was thinking about what other things can be like that. And one of the things I thought of, I was like, this is great for a stand-up bit, is that if you look at RPGs, right, with elves, dwarves, all this other stuff,
right.
And they call them races. Right? And then there's complete distinctions between the races. The elves have +1 to intelligence. The dwarves have resistance to weather and snow and other shit. And if you look about it, the whole thing can be portrayed as a Nazi agenda.
True.
You're empowering certain races and you're showing distinct
true.
differences from one race to another, and that humans are the jack of all trades, therefore they survive well. And these guys, orcs, f*** them. They're dumb, but they have +1 to strength, So I was looking at it from that perspective. I was like, I can easily see a future, and this is my prediction, easily see a future somewhere down the line somebody's going to associate that with racial discrimination.
Mm-hmm.
You won't be able to do Skyrim, your Nord
characters
that has frost resistance because he lives in
because he lives in
it's not going to happen. It's like they're going to, at some point it's going to get to that as well.
You know something, if you told me that a couple of years ago, I would have said you're crazy, but with the way things are right now, well, it's going to happen.
I completely believe that. It's going to happen.
And every fucking day you're seeing new articles about the most dumb shit that people are getting so sensitive about.
And that's the thing. Who are these people who are getting sensitive? I don't know. Is it just one dude on Twitter and all the people who read? These the people who are getting offended?
Look, the Netflix algorithms prove that the majority don't give a
That's the thing.
Okay, the majority don't care, and there's then a war between minority groups. So, for example, we can have this point of view, and we can change our point of view. We can feel like, okay, maybe we're wrong about this. Maybe it is racist to think about dwarves as short people that are, have +1 to, I don't know,
sneak
or something. Yes, exactly. And I'm talking about, don't take this out of context. I'm not talking about Tyrion Lannister or whatever the actor's name is.
No, we're talking fantasy here. D&D.
Yes. D&D, Warcraft, whatever it is you're into, those kind of dwarves. So that's another one. Is that terminology going to change now, for example? If we're a minority that talks about that and we're wrong about it, let's say, and we do find that, okay, maybe it is offensive, then what can you do about it?
You know something, Khalid? I think it boils down to one fundamental point, is that we're bored. We're the human population is just bored.
No, I think it's because it just became very easy.
Because
anybody can go online and just say, "Oh, this really offends me," and write
became very easy
paragraphs, and he's like, what was that thing that I don't know if you guys heard about? I'm sure you guys heard about that. The girl with the Chinese prom dress.
What?
You haven't seen I need to look this up for a second. Basically, there's this teenage girl tweeted like a selfie of her and a couple of friends, and like a new prom dress, and the dress was basically like a traditional Chinese dress, and this Asian dude, I think it was an Asian American dude, who retweeted that and just said, "My culture is not your prom dress."
What?
And what? That's legit, and it blew up. Like people were like, "Yeah, this is cultural appropriation and all that bullshit." And you have articles about this everywhere, and I'm like, are these people nuts? And you know what's really funny? Him saying that, and I went and I looked at his profile picture, and he's dressed like an African American dude in the hood. Like he's dressed like a black dude in the head. And I'm like, if you're talking about cultural appropriation, then don't wear that shit, like all the hats and the chains. Like don't do that. That's not your culture.
There was also this thing with a little girl. She's white, and she was wearing the dress for Halloween from Moana. She was wearing that dress, and feminists, and SJWs were quick to jump to the fact that she shouldn't wear that because she's white and she has white privilege, and Polynesian whatever cultures were oppressed, so it's offensive for her to wear that because they were oppressed and whatever. And I'm just like, dude, she's 9, man.
When did this when did the liberal side of things become this kind of like, oh, we're fighting for our territory, fighting for our rights in that sense, and stopped becoming the hippie peace and love thing? Because if you're thinking about it from the hippie peace of love direction, you would want people to be like, hey, we're all celebrating the same culture, we're one world, we're, NWO. We're all like love, and we all are China, we all are America, we all are Africa, we all are, so I should be able to be African. I should be able to value another person's culture. I want to be Japanese, for example. Like the amount of cultural appropriation for Japanese culture that exists in the world, and I've not heard one Japanese person.
They don't give a shit.
They don't care.
Have you seen their anime? Like they don't give a shit. Like none of the shit that they come up with is like they'll just put a bunch of cultural references all in one.
They laugh at you. You're like, okay, enjoy that. We don't.
Go ahead. I was watching an interview with, I don't know. I think it was Jordan Peterson.
Yeah, I was just gonna talk about it. Where you going?
I think that was him. I'm not sure, but basically he explains the fact that why all these people actually no, it was Ben Shapiro.
Okay. I think it was an interview with him.
Ben Shapiro was. Ben Shapiro is controversial. I'll give you that. He makes some valid points.
Yeah.
He says that this generation hasn't experienced, war, hasn't experienced, major economic depression, hasn't experienced. 2008 wasn't as bad as 1929.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And, they haven't really experienced, life didn't really, f them over. So basically, they don't know what it's like to have something taken away from them. So once a tiny thing is taken away from them, they just get so offended and so furious. I think that's what he said, something along those lines. But it was a very valid point, to be honest.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely true. And I think, like you were just talking about Jordan Peterson, he had a really good point about this as well. Like when you were talking about when did these liberals suddenly, is everything all right?
Okay, that's sorted. I think the mic is back and everybody's headphones are fine and the recording battery is there. So yeah, we were saying about Jordan Peterson.
Yeah, like when you were talking about how, like at one point did it get to these, especially with liberals, at one point did they get too carried away with, people are getting offended by these, like especially when, you're getting all these minorities and everybody's feeling like a minority. And what Jordan Peterson was saying about this is that this is what happens when you try to cater to literally every single person. Yeah. And if you want to see what every single person is being offended about, this is when everyone who's marginalized, like the people who are marginalized are going to have more people marginalized. And it just keeps, it's like a domino effect.
Because he's talking about how the game becomes, and everything, there's always a game, right? Some kind of chess being played.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And the game has become, how do you get victim credit? Have you heard of Gatsat? Gad, he's the Lebanese Jew. He's also like and he's the same thing, but he's a lot more blunt, and I don't think I like his style. But a lot of the points he makes can be considered valid, even though he does it from this aggressive, arrogant kind of way. But yeah, Jordan Peterson's like, you cannot catch him on anything
because he's speaking the truth.
He's speaking at fundamental human truth,
especially with his psychological.
Yeah, he has a background in psychology and whatever.
Especially that. Yeah, because he is a clinical psychologist, and that's the thing that's what really makes his arguments so strong, is that he experienced sitting with people. Like, he has his own statistics in his head. Like, I meet these people every day, and I know how humans are like.
And he's also talking, like I said, about, like, he's taking archetypal stories, like, from even the way he talks about religion to me, it makes me go, yes, thank you. This is something I can listen to.
I sleep to those. I'm not kidding you, man. I just play before I sleep. I'm like, holy shit, this makes so much sense.
I haven't gotten to him talking about religion yet.
You should, man. His biblical talks
watch his lectures.
Like, listen to him talking about Jung and Freud, and it's
really good. It's a decent analysis that makes a lot of these stories have value as principles in your real life. Yeah? Right. The religious biblical stories can have value the same way you can, if you read any novel or any book or a really good story or something, you get some insight into the human condition, right?
True.
And that's the angle he's taking. He's taking that kind of analysis. The problem is, somebody like him, you have to have a real long-winded, long discussion with him to actually understand his point of view. And if you're trying to take him out of context, you easily can.
And that's what happened to him in his interviews, and that's what continues to happen.
The Channel 4 interview, the famous one?
Oh, yeah.
The comment section for that interview was hilarious.
That was the peak of the meme generation, man. Like, that's the amount of memes that
So what you're saying...
Did you see the video of him, his eyes just glowing red, and his glowing laser beams?
But he was on his game. Like, I don't know any person on a personal perspective. I think that's what people like about him, is that he stayed maintained all throughout.
Right, he was very composed.
Very composed, and kept, every time she tried to sideline it with so what you're saying is women can't, is like, I didn't say that. I said, and he kept every time dissecting how she's been diverting the conversation, and it worked against her. And I feel like a lot of these issues are because maybe, like I was saying to Matrook, like when we went to the break I was saying, like, I had a phase in my generation that is social justice-y, and I understand that because when you're at a young age, you're trying to do a lot of change in the world. You feel like, I have to make a change. I have to make an impact. I want to see justice happen. I want to see something happen. And that's why, even from a historical standpoint, they say the world was more violent back when people only lived to the age of 30 or 25.
True.
Because Alexander the Great and everybody else that was like a real changer was young.
Right.
And they're like, I must unify the world.
I got nothing to lose, man. I'm going to die next week or something. So fuck it.
Exactly. They want to see change happen. And young leaders like the Alexander the Greats and other stuff, they made that happen in a very violent world, trying to make their points of view right. So you need people that have aged past, what was it? Even the presidency is like, you have to be at least 40 or something. I can't
something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah.
I have no idea. But once you get past a certain point, your point of view about the world, it starts to get more fleshed out. And you're like, okay, there's a lot more gray than I expected. And it's really annoying. It really off-puts me.
And people don't like to hear that. You know, they think that the world is, it's either black or white. You know, it's not always like that.
Reality
it's
TV,
never
man.
like that.
I blame reality TV.
I blame reality TV as well.
I blame Star Wars, man.
that was a nice callback.
It is a good callback. It is a callback. What was it going to say? What was it? Do you guys feel like there's the equivalent of that here? When we do our stand-up sets, people are very open. I was very worried.
Yeah.
The first time I did the Raven's Nest, I was very worried at that open mic because everybody was young.
Yeah. True.
And
that's true.
I was
I was kind of worried, you know, especially in my... Was it the last set? No, the one before that. I mean, I was like... Not sure if I should. As soon as I stood, I'm like, I don't know if I should say all of this.
I was visibly worried.
You were. I can tell. I think it was the air conditioning at the time.
I didn't know it was winter at the time, but he was still sweating. I was like, just falling apart, talking about flat Earth and
Talking about flat Earth and Satan and
oh my god.
and chickens.
I really enjoyed that though, because I could see that everybody from the people that went up for stand up were because everybody was like already there, like, hey, happy love music time, and it was for people that don't know, it is an open arts kind of open mic, so there are musicians, there are poets, and there's everything else. And I was worried, the same as everybody else, about the fact that, okay, what am I going to say?
Right.
Keep it geeky. All right, keep it this. Keep it about your personal experience. Oh, make fun of Saudis. They're all going to laugh. That's what Bahrainis do. They enjoy laughing about Saudis. But it worked. And then I realized, I was like, oh, okay, the college kid generation in the Middle East is not as social justice-y as it is outside.
There's a fair amount.
Yeah.
But that's what I was surprised by, is that, which thank God, like they don't really get easily offended.
Yeah.
As much as I thought they would.
It's shifted.
I mean, in the case with me, I'm 20, and the people that I hang out with sort of, they got the sweet spot between like being moderately sort of, SJW, whatever, but they don't take it to heart.
Right.
Like I told you in the break, they defend things that, that's common sense.
Yeah.
They don't go over the top. I think it's more like the teenagers nowadays. Right. The iPad generation.
You think so?
I call them the little pump generation.
Exactly. Little Xanax generation.
Generation.
People my age, the people that I've interacted with that are my age, sort of have that sweet spot, which I like, but they don't take it to the extreme. Unlike, teenagers nowadays, talking about how the air conditioning is sexist.
What is this? He said this off air, and I was like, "What are you talking about?"
There's this British feminist girl,
okay,
that apparently works in an office that's too cold, and she made an argument that the AC is sexist because men control the thermostat.
Oh my god! Yes, I've heard this
I
before.
thought it was the AC itself that is sexist. I was like, how can it be?
Like, fucking hell, if you're too cold, just go and, increase the temperature. Like, no one's going to tell you anything for that.
I knew a girl that would do that in class, and everybody knew that. She was in high school with me at the time. It was so annoying because she was the only one that would be like, it's too cold, it's too hot, it's too cold, it's too hot. And it's like,
right?
I can't I was much fatter than I am right now, okay? Like, Matrook, I would give you a run for your money, okay? And at the time, I was like, I can't help that my body is insulated and I'm dealing with it. And like, I could live in the heat. I grew up in Saudi, so my heat resistance is much higher.
That's what happens when people get marginalized and they try to get their own rights by themselves.
Yeah,
that's exactly what happens. I'm getting offended because the AC is cold for me, so I have to
go up there and do it. But there's no conversation, is there? She didn't go up and she asked everybody, hey, guys, I feel this way. I'd like to have a discussion because I feel like, hey, you fat over there, I know that you can handle the cold. So is the cold okay for you? So guys, I'm fat shaming myself. So please don't get offended and say I'm fat shaming people. Okay, I would have appreciated her actually saying, "Fat can you please go ahead and tell me how you feel about the temperature? Because like for me it's cold, for you it's not. But you seem to have heat resistance because you're Saudi. So is it okay if we settle at this temperature?" But it wasn't like that. It wasn't a conversation. It was like immediately she played a card. The card was, I feel this way, and I'm right. I'm the hurt sensitive girl that doesn't get her to say. So I need this. I need this in my life.
And this lady, she was talking about how like men absorb the cold more efficiently than women.
What?
Is that like biologically true?
If it's true, I'll accept it.
That's bull.
Is it?
That is bull.
I mean, look, when you think about it, isn't it like the bigger you are, the more susceptible you are to heat? Isn't that the whole?
Definitely. Like if when Ghazi is here around all the time, or even Matrook, like I always make sure to have the podcast studio as cold as
right.
Because if I have to shut off the AC,
again, he doesn't provide blankets.
No, I don't.
The blankets over there, though.
They're right there, man. I provide them. You just can't use them. But what was I gonna say? Like in the past, when you had these kinds of conflicts, you'd understand that life is just confusing. There's no right and
Exactly.
wrong way.
Mhm.
So you counterbalance that by talking to people. But people aren't talking to each other.
But
Yeah.
dude, think about it. Like, man, there's hungry children in Africa. There's people suffering. You know,
Yeah.
there's refugees and whatever, and people are taking time off of a major news channel to talk about the AC being sexist. Like,
Yeah.
that's what bothers me.
And they're
Yeah.
talking about how DJ Khaled doesn't like to go down on a woman.
Right? Like,
Yeah,
what a
What
trivial
is this
topic to
now?
talk
I'm
about.
not kidding
What
you,
is
man.
this?
I just read an article about
About DJ
about
Khaled
DJ
doesn't go
Khaled.
down on women.
He doesn't go down.
This is his actual
But
quote. I don't go down.
He's like, I don't go down. That's disgusting. But but I expect my wife to go down on me.
Oh my God.
And they claim that he's sexist because he said that.
oh, great.
I'm like, if they agree on it, like if they're both comfortable with that, like why is that sexist? You know, like if she's okay with it and he's fine, like why is that? I don't
just
get
don't.
people, man.
That's between them, isn't it?
Exactly. Like, why does it have to be sexist?
See, that's the thing, right? You know, when people, when you talk about like conspiracy theories to people are so often quick to point out that, it's the media, man, the media and whatever. I'm like, okay, fine, the media has a part in this,
Right.
but if you actively, support these articles and give them attention, of course the media is going to
True.
cater to what you want.
Yeah,
Right.
I don't think it's ever the
But-
media's
but wait,
fault. I
it's-
think it's always the person's fault who's exposed to the media.
Okay, so I'm gonna play devil's advocate here for a second because I there is one thing that does make me feel a bit confused about some of these things. So DJ Khaled does represent; he's a public figure. So when people say, "Oh, you're a public figure," you should represent the better values of society, right?
Why should he though?
I don't know. Does he or doesn't he?
I don't think he does. Like, why would? See, this is the thing. This is the way I see it.
right.
If you're a public figure,
Yeah.
that's the thing about, like, you'd have to define what a public figure is now. Like, anyone who's an Instagram and has
Yeah,
21K,
exactly.
is like, is that a public figure?
Sorry,
But when you want to talk about,
OJ, sorry, it's quote unquote social media influencer right now. Please,
Oh, I don't
please
even
be
get me
PC about the
started, man.
terms. Go ahead, man. Sorry for that.
man, I kind of lost my.
Well, people do kind of judge people though who are social media influencers the second they start.
I was just thinking about Omar Farooq as
Oh
like a
my
media
God.
influencer.
Oh no!
We need to get to that.
We really do.
Oh my god. Okay. Yeah. We like if you're an influencer and you have I don't know how many followers and you're talking about video games all the time, there is a backlash when like a guy that's known for his video game reviews or whatever, or he's fun for this, or he's talking about fitness, or she's talking about fitness. The second they start talking about a topic they don't know, there's immediately a backlash, which is like, oh, no, I don't want to hear your point of view about this because I don't agree with you. And then some people are like, oh, I'm interested to know what you feel about this because they want to have more of an insight into the real person behind
And
it.
they have the right to do so. Like, like if being a public figure or not, you have the right to comment on whatever you want.
Because you're a normal human being.
Exactly.
You're supposed to have flaws. You're supposed to have positions. And then it changes
Absolutely.
over time.
And people have the right to, criticize you on that. And that's fair enough too.
I can convince DJ Khaled in a year's time maybe that he's wrong on his stance, but I'm not going to say, I'm going to be like, man, what's happening in that marriage? What's going on, man? Come on.
And that's the other thing. Like, I'm always wondering why people expect public figures like him, for example. I'm not trying to define what he is or what he represents, but why are they expecting someone like him to comment on things as if he was an intellectual? Because he's not, and he's far from that.
Well, because apparently he has some kind of perceived power. Influence to them nowadays is power, but how many people have influence? So you said it yourself. It's not like back in the day where somebody has a platform on TV and then they're like, okay, you have power, therefore you must represent the better value of all of society. Now you have 1 million people. So how does that work? Like we were talking about the Omar Farooq thing last time. All right, so go ahead and explain this to people. What I showed you guys.
OJ, you want to take this or should I?
Please do. I showed them this after the last podcast. We mentioned it a bit.
I think we have to start as who is Omar Farooq?
Yes, go ahead.
Well, that's the thing. Like, to me, he's supposedly a media influencer. At least right now he is, because he started off as this kind of a YouTube sort of like one of the early Bahraini YouTubers,
right? Yeah,
like, that actually blew up, And I don't know what got into his head that he just sort of assumed that at one point, I have the responsibility to comment on these certain issues, which is fine if you want to do so. when you're tackling a subject like child, sexual harassment, and there are certain things that really need to be handled very, very carefully, and I don't think he's doing an accurate job.
You know something? It's the way he presented it that really. I mean, look.
Okay, let me just give a background about what happened with this. So he usually does these like, Omar Farooq does this.
Yeah,
he's like, he's gonna. Omar tries to like clean up and sanitation. Or Omar tries to like.
It's supposed to be like a social awareness kind of
campaign thing.
Yeah.
So the most recent one, the one that happened actually the last podcast, is a day after that aired. It was like already 800,000 views or something by the time I showed you guys. And it was Omar Farooq is I don't want to say tries pedophilia because that sounds
the title of it is I'm a pedophile. I'm kidding you. That's the title of the YouTube video, and he put that up there
because he's trying to generate.
It's
clickbait, man. It is. Come on.
If I was a parent and I saw the title of the video, I'd be horrified.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. Like, first impression usually is the last impression. And I see a guy uploading a video on YouTube saying that I'm a pedophile.
Yeah.
I'll just be horrified.
And it's well-known influencer, his channel, and says, I'm a pedophile. It's a picture of him with a shitty beard.
Exactly. Like with all the controversy with YouTube stars like, Logan Paul and whatever. And you're God damn, these guys are a subject of controversy. So this guy writing that I'm a pedophile just horrifies me.
Do you imagine like how many thousands were clicking on it? It's like, I knew it. This I knew this. He looked like it. Okay, it's not about that. But
it would be funny if someone just opened it halfway. Yeah, and he's like grabbing a child. It's like, I knew it, son of a bitch.
But you know something? We're comedians, so we looked at it from a very comedic point of view, and I'm sure a lot of people look at it.
I promise you, a lot of people did. Because let's explain what's happening.
Can I first comment on there's this one bit where they.
Well, let's tell them the whole thing. Let's tell them the whole thing. Okay. Right, so he basically dresses up as a skeevy looking pedophile, right? And the first few minutes it opens to him like being in costume, explaining how it's a problem in society.
Just so to make this clear, the background of this is that it's a campaign that's supposed to teach children how not to get harassed.
Exactly. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Nothing at all. Let's make that very clear.
Yes.
There's nothing in
fact, it is encouraged.
The idea about this is very well motivated. So the idea is awareness. So let's talk about this issue instead of what we do in the Middle East, which is like bury it and not really talk about it, not have public awareness about it.
But the execution
was Oscar award-winning execution, mate. I tell you. And I don't know why. Like I watched it. I think it's a shame that I contributed to 3 views to that 800,000. But I watched it 3 times because I wanted to know what point was he trying to make in the very beginning. You've watched it twice, I think.
Yes, I have. Yeah.
The very beginning, he's trying to act as a pedophile.
Yeah, but after he says that, by the way, the pedophile has like he's in a very somber, very serious way. He's saying, by the way, what do you think a pedophile looks like? He's like, does he have a beard? Is he Is he like conservative? He's like, well, the pedophile doesn't have
an image,
or the molester doesn't have a specific look. But then as he's saying this woman is trying to make this fake ass raccoon beard look
so
realistic.
He's basically wearing like a redneck T-shirt and a fanny pack for some reason.
fanny pack.
And his beard does not even look like a beard. It's like they took off something from a broom and they put it on his
something
face.
That just died on the road.
Like he recreated the image of the pedophile. When you see the word pedophile, like that's what I think.
Like when you're saying that, the pedophile does not have a clear look, and then you're doing you're making yourself look like a cliche or what a pedophile would probably look like.
If anything, I would look. He did the cliche, and I was saying it doesn't have a look. But then, of course, the argument would be because he's trying to hide his identity because he's a famous YouTuber.
Why not?
Just have some other guy.
Exactly.
Pull some other guy off.
And then this is where this bit right here is the one that I don't understand. After the bit where they're putting his makeup on and everything, it cuts to a scene where he's like in the middle of this abandoned sort of house or something, and
Right.
he's going
Like
around,
some ditch
and
or
he's
something.
going around like he's sneaking and
Sneaking, yeah.
that's, why are you looking for children in an abandoned place somewhere on a Mazra'ah? I'm like,
it was such a Tom and Jerry sort of representation.
It was.
like,
And
how are you expecting me to take that?
when I showed
serious?
this to OJ and Matrook at the time, it's like, it's well past 1 million views now. But at the time I showed it to, I was like, please wait, the best scene is coming up, and it's and there's
and it does come up.
It does. It's like they're talking to this kindergarten. I think it's called like a daycare center.
Yeah.
It's run by this woman and another guy that another person that works there as well. And he's very effeminate, right?
Right.
So I'm not gonna assume, but he might be gay. I'm not sure, but he could just be fluffy or faffy or
Probably.
what's the term? I forgot it now. But very soft, very feminine. Maybe
Not to offend anybody.
not
of
to
course.
offend,
Right,
anyone.
not to offend
Of course,
anybody.
Of course not. There's nothing wrong with with the person's identity, but it's just the contrast of the image and how it portrays in the next scene, which is they're training the kids to kind of resist, because what's happening in this is that they give the kids an education about people that molest and people that are pedophiles and perverts and all that, and then after that they send them off, and Omar kind of tries to test them by like luring them into his car. I don't know what kind of car that
Right.
was. It was a really like car specialists out there are probably screaming because they know what
Yeah,
the
I mean, I don't know what kid wouldn't want to get into that
I
car.
guess,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, if I was a kid, man,
I think they went around and was like, so what car would a kid get into? I think that's definitely the
That's the one that speaks to children everywhere. But yeah, they do that. But during the daycare time, there's this scene that OJ just cracks the hell up. And
I still do.
they have a moment where they're teaching them about, like, basically don't let them touch you in any sense or way. Just push them away. And it's like, yeah, do that. But then they have these giant foam hand sticks.
hands, right.
These giant hand slaps.
And they poke them with it. I'm not shitting you. This actually happens.
Like not like it's a gentle, like, hey, come to move into it. It's like a poke, like a cattle prod.
Exactly.
Just like spearing them with these hand slappers.
I wondered if the kids got to take the hands home with them. Like, when I was watching that with a friend of mine, when it came to that scene, he was like, "Holy shit! I need one of those in my house. I can itch my back."
Oh God!
The thing with this video is, it's funny, but like it's a real issue.
Yeah, it is.
It is.
That was my point at the time. Is that if you're addressing an issue like child molestation, it can't be done like that.
No.
You gotta be very, very careful, And this happens a lot especially in media. Like when you're, like, I mean, this is like a horrible, comparison, but I'll just go with it. Like when you're going to cinema, especially in cinema, when you're addressing an issue like that, it's gotta be done very, very, very carefully.
Measured
Because if you do one mistake, it just falls apart immediately.
I think that was my issue with the video, is that there's good on him for picking it up when nobody else would. Good on him
True.
for being a person that's trying to basically make change, but it does come off as
Comedic.
comedic. That's our mind working.
Yeah,
I'm sure like there's 40% of people watching it that were as well.
But it does, and I showed it to a lot of people, and they actually they didn't even believe that
This was real.
This was serious,
Yeah, it's that, and it's also because there's a little hint that it's about the ratings. It's about the how it looks, and it's gonna capture people's imagination, and honestly, also like make parents scared. Which I don't. It's like fear mongering. Which is, I know they should be aware of it and they should be talking about it. But I much would have rather had interviews and people talking about their experiences, talking about how common it is,
right?
Talking about what you can do to prevent it. When in reality it was more like, okay, we're gonna just. It felt like a prank TV show to me. Like, okay, look at the kid. He's freaking out. Because some of these kids would freak out. Yeah, and sorry, you remember you made that comment about like was it the same woman? And like every time,
was it? Oh my God, I don't know.
Like because every time one of the kids would run to their mother, it was always a mother that was fully like niqab and everything. Yeah, so we couldn't tell if that was.
And
the same
I don't know if it was. I think you said this too, and I showed it to my friend, and he said the same thing. He's like, what if there's a twist in the end and
Right?
she takes off and it's him
It's
again?
It's freaky, man. It's the way he just like comes out of nowhere.
God.
So it's not like I'm sure these kids are gonna be traumatized for the rest of their life
pretty
because of this
sure.
video.
No
Those
way.
kids.
None of them are gonna get a car like
They're gonna
that.
be like, dude. They're gonna be like in like some stadium somewhere for a football game or something, and people have the foam hands. And they're just gonna be slapping. It's like, no, get this away from me. Get the fuck away from me, all of you. I'm surrounded by pedophiles.
Oh man.
Yeah. It's these moments that are like that when it happens in real life, you're like, this is surreal. I can't believe this is real right now.
Yeah, it was so hilarious. I think honestly, like the guy should really be careful. Like a public figure like him, someone who's got this big of a following, you can't.
You just made the argument then.
No. But that's the thing, because that's what he does.
Right.
Like when you compare it to DJ Khaled is not expected to say anything, fundamentally, profound or anything. Like he's not. His role isn't to comment on social issues.
Right.
But Omar built this foundation of him.
Oh, so
commenting.
his beginning was based off of stuff like
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
I always thought he was just like,
absolutely.
hey, look at me doing this.
No. He
No,
started off by doing travel series, and it's about him experiencing different countries from the perspective of.
So it's always
Those
social
people.
commentary.
It's always social commentary,
Oh,
like
okay,
from,
all right,
as
okay.
far as I know, like that's.
So that would be your. Whoa! What just happened? This mic is weird. Like it's some angles, it's a lot better. Like this angle right here is perfect. All right. I'm never gonna figure this out. I'm telling you.
It's always something. It's always
something.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're saying that he's always been the kind of guy that has that kind of social commentary, and that is the distinction between a public figure that does comment and a public figure that shouldn't comment, or maybe
saying
shouldn't
that.
have the responsibility.
Shouldn't have the responsibility to.
Okay,
And
so-
shouldn't be judged by literally anything he says, because he's not like when you're.
What about Kanye?
Like I was just gonna, that was
Yes.
on the tip of my tongue. Like when you're talking about Kanye, like I don't know why people are getting pissed off about what Kanye is saying. Although what he said recently was pretty much insane, But then again, I think, but why am I taking this so seriously? Like he's not. It's not like I'm listening to someone who has constantly made intellectual comments about social issues or. Like, I'm not expecting him to be that clever. I'm not saying that he's stupid, but I'm not expecting him to address
be
issues
responsible to like nuanced
So if
conversation.
he said something stupid, I'm like, it's Kanye.
If I could just shoot my opinion on this, I think the whole Kanye thing is because Keeping Up with the Kardashians is losing ratings, so he had to do something like outrageous. Like he was the sacrificial lamb.
Do you think
For
so?
that, right? Seriously, like if you think about it, with Keeping Up,
I have a bigger conspiracy. I think he's doing all of this as a publicity stunt for his next album.
I think he's running for president, man. I think that's what's going to
He
happen.
said he will.
He
He said that a couple of years ago.
The Rock, they're thinking about him as a real contender, and Oprah both. So
Honestly, after Trump, anybody can be president.
you think,
Right.
yeah, that's what changed the game.
Yeah, that's why all these people. I'm like, hey, I can do that.
I think that's
If he
the-
can do it, I can do that.
That's to me what like made hope happen.
But does Kanye meet the age restriction for a president?
No, I'm
think
sure
so.
he does. Yeah,
I think so,
Really?
yeah.
Yeah, the dude has been doing hip hop since the 90s.
Yeah,
man.
he's up there. But yeah, I think that was my I think silver lining kind of moment with Trump being the president. It was like, oh, see, anybody can be president. It's
Right.
like, that should give people hope.
You know the funny thing about that time, like when they're announcing the presidency, what was it? Like, yeah, it was him and Hitler in the end, and I don't remember who I was talking to, and I said, I hope he wins. I hope he wins. And I was just saying it as a joke because I knew that he wasn't going to win.
Right.
And I was like, I just really hope he wins just so they can see how f***ed up that decision was. Like, I want them to learn from their mistakes. And then he won, and I'm like, holy shit.
But do you
It
think
actually
people,
did happen.
do you think people learned the most important lesson, which is elections do matter? That's like you actually do have power. If
I don't know if they learned it, but I know that that's important. Like, I don't know if they're going to repeat the same mistake again. Because when you look at American history, I mean, I'm not very educated in, like, history of presidents, but when you look back and you see people like George Bush and, what's his name?
Senior or
No.
junior?
Yeah,
George
W.
George W. Bush.
Yeah.
and what was his name? The Monica Lewinsky dude.
Clinton.
Clinton's, I don't know why I
yeah.
forgot his name. Yeah, and like when you see people like that getting to the presidency, you're like, how bad can it be? And then it's Trump, and it's like, it's just it's almost like a.
Well, it happens in any system, right?
I always say that Donald Trump, comedians really appreciate Donald Trump because he gave them 4 more years of material. But
although I prefer the W material. I don't know why. W was just funny
because Trump is easy.
Trump is easy.
Trump is so easy. Because anything he says can be funny.
Yeah, exactly.
George Bush is like, you need to be a lot more.
Do you know why? Because George Bush, you could see him try. You could see him try to be like serious and everything else, and he was like, and he just up like he wouldn't open the door properly after saying it.
And George Bush did not go to WWE and do a stunt there. George Bush was not in a reality TV show. And
exactly. So he's already a cartoon before he even got there. Yeah.
Trump was a joke from the very beginning. Like I was just listening to. I just remember this. I was just listening to Kendrick Lamar in the car, and this was a song from 2007, maybe or 8,
right?
And he was making a joke. I forget the lyric, but he was making a joke of, "You should just go and vote for Donald Trump." And I was like, "Shit, this was like back then."
Right.
Oh no way!
Like the joke that he was making, I'm like, dude, he had no idea what was going to happen.
Clue.
It was coming, man. It was coming right at you.
But see, the thing, I totally agree with you when it comes to George W. Bush.
Yeah.
It was more hilarious when comedians made fun of him, because I said, okay, comedians will appreciate him because he gave them 4 extra years of material.
Right. Yeah.
But after like a year, you just get bored of the Trump jokes.
It's repetitive, isn't it?
It's like OJ said, it's too easy.
He's orange. He's a pumpkin. He waves his hands around. He's
easy.
overweight. He's not. He's weird. I know what you mean. Yeah. I think we've covered, honestly, most of... We're actually way over time at the moment, so I want to get on some different topics as well, but thank you guys for coming in today.
Yep.
We'll cover that on next time.
Indeed, we will.
More to happen and more happening on the way, and hopefully Matrook will have a lot more sessions with you before you have to leave. I don't know if you guys know this, and we didn't mention it last time, but Matrook, I want him to be a staple figure in the show, especially for the Banter Buddies episode.
Oh,
but he's congratulations to him. He is heading to Canada, inshallah, if everything.
If I can get the visa,
if he can get the visa, but it's Canada, so he has to placate the Bears. He doesn't have to worry about
Just
Trump.
be nice to everybody.
Yeah, be nice to everybody.
Just be a liberal.
right? Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So he is going to be heading out there by July if everything goes as planned.
September.
September.
Yes.
All right, so September. So we got plenty of time until then. We'll be here with you guys all throughout summer, and maybe by next time it'll be Ramadan. So Ramadan Kareem to everybody.
Ramadan
Yes,
Kareem.
indeed.
Ramadan.
Ramadan.
And we'll stay tuned next time for some more controversial topics, or hopefully just fun topics, whether it's movies or anything else. It slides down the spectrum.
It started out really well,
It
but then
did.
we sort
And
of
then
like it just took off.
It's the nature of the format. We don't always want this stuff. I can go geeky or anything else, depending. But yeah, give us your comments, your feedback, share with people. Let us know what you'd want to hear about. If you feel differently about what we're talking about, or feel like we missed some important points, go ahead. Have a conversation.
Please.
That's how we actually
that's
get
how
to.
we want to do it.
Yeah, don't get offended. Let's have a conversation. And
Please
that's the
do.
most important part of any kind of conflict resolution.